All right, doctrinal summary. Good seeing you again. Well, I'm not really seeing you. I'm looking at a white light that's looking at me. You can see me. Anyways, good seeing me again, I'm sure. We are coming into the last couple sessions here, and the first thing I want to go over, well, first of all, with your ecclesiology chapters, everybody's is in. And that is just fantastic. I think this is the first time that every single student got theirs in, like within the time frame that's been, that was added without before any late points are reduced. But that's funny because this is the first time that there was a problem with the schedule. So anyways, I apologize for that. I sent out an email about that. I had written the schedule for both Doctrinal Summary 1, both trimesters during the summer of last year, and trying to sort of predict when all the breaks are going to be and stuff. And I knew we might I was thinking we might run into a problem at some point, and we did, but we got through it. So I apologize for that. All of your chapters are in, though, the whole class, which is fantastic. And basically, like I said in an email going out, is that this doesn't have to be complicated because there's only a few more sessions left, and the dates are going to be off. So instead of me redoing the whole syllabus right now, as I put in the email and as I tell you right now, just for every date that you look at, just go back 1 week. That's all, because the schedule was a week ahead. So just fall back a week. You guys can handle that. You're just continue doing what you're doing, the momentum you have. The reading log for eschatology is due on the 9th, which is in 2 days. I'm recording this right now on Tuesday. So you already know that, and just continue the momentum you got. If there is a problem, please reach out to me. If you have any problems, any problems with the due dates or whatever, always be in communication with your professor. There's no reason not to be. And on that note, I've said this before, and I know the school, especially Cheryl Obst, she'll say it, and Jillian Hines, please check your student emails. That's how we communicate with you guys. I mean, I'll get emails from you guys, and I'll respond back within the hour, and then I don't get a response back for like 3 more days sometimes. And it happened a little bit with this chapter with some of you with the due dates that were a little off. But communicate with me and check your emails. And I don't have your personal phone numbers. A couple of you I do, but not everybody. And so the way that we communicate as professors at the school officially is through email. So everything, especially when it comes to due dates and grades and all that, has to be through email. Check your email. Check your student email. In fact, I don't understand how some of you can't, to be honest with you. I've been in your shoes. I still am, being a part-time student, finishing my THM. But I've been full-time, from bachelor's up through the different master's degrees, and I've always checked my student email. Add it to your device, your tablet, your smartphone, whatever, or just on your computer. Just make a habit to constantly check your email. All right, because I will send out announcements with emails, and sometimes I don't hear back from you guys. I don't know what you're getting, and then the answer to the question you have was in my email I already sent to you. So check your email. I'm representing all the professors at the school and telling you that. So anyways, your ecclesiology chapters were really good. There was a few bumps on a couple of your guys' papers. You got my comments back, but for the most part, it was very well done. So we are moving on, and I'm going to wrap this up. At least how I consider wrapping up, which is, sometimes drags on. But we're into eschatology this week. Also, one more thing on the syllabus, because things are going to get a little bit different as you finish your eschatology chapter and your Christian life chapter, and then we're going to get into oral defenses. So right now, I'm already sort of, throwing it out there. I'm going to start hand-picking different faculty members at the school in the Bible and theology department to be your readers. You might have one or an extra one. It'll be myself as well as Dean James Fazio. So it's coming into that time, because they need several weeks to read over your document. You're turning in a couple 100-page document or however long it's going to be, so they need some time to look at it. But we're getting down to that time, and I'm going to start sending out dates for when you guys can make it. Those on campus, you need to do it on campus with me. And those of you can't, those of you that are registered online, you can do it online, or if you can make it to the campus, you can do it there as well. But I will be sending an email out to you guys or some type of notification soon, so please check your email again, because we're going to have to get dates set for when you guys can come in. A few of you are going on a trip. Jonathan and Todd, I know you guys are going to Israel, and we might have to push your guys' up, your oral defense, which is not going to be a problem. You guys can handle it. I'll be in contact with each of you of how to do that once I get it all figured out. But we'll get it all worked out, and it'll be great. So if you have any questions on the scheduling, on oral defense stuff, whatever, when we get there, please send me emails and check for my responses. All right, so we are now on eschatology. You know the drill. Get in your reading logs. I'm sure you're neck deep in it already. I do want to make a mention. I'm going to go over I'm going on Blackboard right now. I'm trying to get to the, what am I trying to get to? I'm trying to get to the outline. The outline, if you want to pull it up or just listen to me bloviate for a while. The Doctrine of the Church outline. Okay, so you know that the bold things have to be covered. The letters under them do not. Those are guide rails for you. Another thing, when it comes to formatting your table of contents, and I'm assuming you understand when I put TOC in all caps in feedback, I'm talking about your table of contents. That's how we abbreviate it. There's still some problems with just copying and pasting this and using it as your table of contents. If you do that, just format it correctly. There shouldn't be any bold in your table of contents, right? Turabian doesn't have. You can look at the SES Turabian guide. It doesn't have bold and headings for your TOC, and it sounds like I'm saying TLC, doesn't it? For tender loving care, or that really annoying 90s pop group. But I'm saying TOC, table of contents. Just make sure that's formatted correctly. If you actually copy and paste my outline as your table of contents, I'm telling you that's okay. Totally okay. Just make sure you get the letters out of there and embolden the font. It needs to be looking like a properly formatted TOC. And make sure, here's another thing, when you do write on if your table of contents is going to have these subpoints, like definition of church, birth of church. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong outline. I'm looking at the ecclesiology outline. Hold on a second. Okay, doctrine of last things, eschatology. That's where I'm at now. If you do write on things like premillennialism, amillennialism, or I'm skipping down to the intermediate state, temporary, heaven, hell, all that stuff, then make sure that those are actual headings in the body of your paper. You can't have them in your table of contents, but then don't actually have them as headings down below. They are second level subheadings, which is just, they're unemboldened. Unlike the first level headings are boldened, the second level subheadings are not. Third level subheadings are italicized and flush left. Just look at the samples that we have of the template and the SES Turabian guide. But I'm here looking at the outline right now for eschatology. So this is going to be an interesting chapter. Eschatology scares a lot of people, and sometimes it's sort of looked at as a doctrine that's just attached to the end, and there's so much different, interpretations of things, so it's okay to just be wild with it. Well, I don't think so. But the first thing that you see there is the main views of eschatology. We want to go into what are the different views. The premillennialism is what our school is. We are specifically dispensational premillennialism. You'll see I put it in parentheses there. Historic premillennialism and dispensational premillennialism. So premillennialism isn't always dispensational. Sometimes it's historic. In fact, I say the major scholarly form of premillennialism is historic, not dispensational. That's unfortunate, and I am fully convicted of trying to change that, which is why we need to be publishing and writing and going to conferences as dispensationalists, to be a voice in the scholarly realm, because it's the accurate view, at least I think so. The difference between historic and dispensational premillennialism is really, it centers on the distinction of church and Israel. Dispensationalism are the ones that understand there are two programs God has, that the church is distinct from Israel. Therefore, the church will come to, the age of the church, or the dispensation of the church, you want to put it that way, will come to an end with the rapture. Historic premillennialism says no, the church, they don't see such a rigid distinction. They do see a distinction, it's just not as tightly held. And the church goes through the rapture, the tribulation, because there is no pre-trib rapture. So you'll see a lot of guys that are pre-mill, post-trib, which is historic premillennialism. And sometimes they believe in the covenants of covenant theology sometimes. Guys like John Piper are noted historic premillennialists. A lot of guys from the Southern Baptist Convention are as well. So you got premillennialism, the different forms, right? Amillennialism, postmillennialism, hermeneutics concerning the millennialism. Now, just real quick, I'm assuming that you know this by now. You've taken the courses, but amillennialism is that there is no physical millennium, that we are in it right now. It's a very reformed and Presbyterian look. They don't see a distinction between the church and kingdom. Like we hold a distinction between the church and Israel, as well as the church and kingdom, as a lot of you, as you guys all realize in your papers. Well, they don't even hold the distinction between church and kingdom. They kind of look at it the same, and we're in it right now. Postmillennialism is sort of the same thing. We are building the kingdom. The church is a huge part of it, but we're Christianizing or building or advancing the kingdom before Christ returns. I don't think that's right. I think premillennialism is right, that Jesus will return before the millennium to set it up the millennium. But you'll see in letter D, hermeneutics concerning the millennium. To me, this is very important. Everything boils down to hermeneutics. That is the major doctrine. So this is a good time to revisit something you've already written, say in your bibliology chapters on hermeneutics. But here it sort of ties it together from the first one to the end here. Hermeneutics is so important. So it's not that, again, eschatology is something you believe just tacked on at the end. However you're interpreting scriptures consistently throughout, it's just going to consistently go on throughout your view of the book of Revelation and, the theology of eschatology. If you understand literal, grammatical, historical hermeneutics and you're interpreting everything literally, then by the time you get to Revelation and things like chapter 20, which is where the kingdom is, you're going to understand it literally and see that, well, it falls chronologically. Jesus returns in chapter 19 and establishes the kingdom in chapter 20. It's very simple. So anyways, that might not be everybody's view, and I recognize that. So that's why you see in letter E, it's your own personal view. Here, you want to cover all of the different eschatological views and then land somewhere. If you're not premillennial or you're not dispensational premillennial, then fine. You fail the class and you get kicked out of the school. It's not a big deal. But anyway, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. If that's not where you fit, then just land somewhere and make sure that your arguments are there, backed by your understanding of Scripture. Physical death. Why is this in this chapter? Well, it's personal eschatology at this point. What happens when you die. This is a lot of revisiting things in Genesis. Kind of like, hold on a second, close the window because I got the garbage man coming. You're revisiting things with hermeneutics. Well, you're going to revisit things in, say, Genesis. Genesis and the Revelation, the book of Revelation. These are bookcases. What do you call them? What's the word? Unless some of you are thinking right now. When you hold your books to bookends. Boy, I'm losing it. Bookends. Genesis and Revelation. So there's a lot of parallels between them, and you'll see, okay, well, physical death, where did it come from? How did it start? How does this play in eschatology? Well, you're going to die. What happens when you die? What happens when you die when you're a believer? What happens when you die when you're a non-believer? The intermediate states, that's what we're talking about. It follows exactly on the heels of physical death. It's temporary. What we consider heaven now is only temporary. A lot of times we don't realize that. You think it's the eternal state right now when you die, and it's not. It's a temporary place. The eternal state is on a new heavens and new earth. But anyways, what are the immediate states? Heaven, where the righteous are. Sheol, a lot of times in the Old Testament, is actually talked about in a good sense. It could be paradise. It doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It just means death. It means the grave. That's how they looked at it. Hell is where the wicked go, right? You got the different words for it. Hades, Gehenna, the abyss, outer darkness. These are things to explore in your chapter there. And finally, future biblical events. That's when you're getting to the rapture of the church, the different views of them. Pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. do a slight analysis and synthesis, and then land on your own view of it. The tribulation period, what happens during that time? You see the rise of the Antichrist, the Old Testament prophecies being fulfilled, all the judgments of Israel is happening at that time. The return of Christ, the millennial kingdom that he brings with him. Some of your chapters on the church, this was, you can revisit that. Things that were distinct between the church and the kingdom. There is a distinction, right? Jesus coming back, to establish the kingdom. The church is going to be with them, the saints of heaven coming back with him. At least that's how I believe that Revelation plays out. But here you got the millennial kingdom is where the biblical covenants, all of those covenants that are still unfulfilled will be fulfilled. That land covenant, the Davidic covenant, will be fully fulfilled in Jesus Christ, in Jerusalem, in Israel. The land covenant, the Davidic covenant, even the full consummation of the Abrahamic covenant, the new covenant, I believe, is when that gets fulfilled, is in the kingdom. Then you got the resurrection. You got the resurrection of the righteous and the wicked. And then finally the eternal state. So you got a lot there to kind of chew on. Don't be intimidated by this chapter just because there are so many differing views. It all comes out of your hermeneutics. If you've already devoted to historical, grammatical, literal hermeneutics, then you just read the book of Revelation chronologically and it makes sense. It makes better sense that way, I think, than anything else. But anyways, so that's the outline there. Shoot me an email if you have any questions. And real quick, regarding the journals, you'll notice that they are kind of, I guess, a little biased toward dispensational type views, but at least it's good for you to be exposed to scholarly sources that are voices for pre-trib dispensationalism or dispensational premillennialism. Excuse me. I was really sick this last week. I was actually at the beginnings of pneumonia, so still in my throat. Nothing that a puffer and some prayer can take care of, and has. And antibiotics. Okay, you'll notice the first one, Richard Mayhew. He's the vice president of the Master Seminary. Does a great article on the pre-tribulational rapture. It's there for you to use if you like. Following that, Pentecost, salvation and tribulation. He deals with that question. If the church is gone, then how are people saved during the tribulation? And a lot of non-dispensationalists, they use a lot of straw man attacks, and they mischaracterize dispensationalism, and it's really unfortunate. That's why it's good to have dispensational scholars out there, always being a voice for dispensationalism, the correct view of what it means. And so Pentecost is a good good short article. There's only 7 pages of how people are saved, and it doesn't affect dispensationalism whatsoever. The church is raptured. It's gone. But God is still working, It's incredible to think that more people are going to be saved during the tribulation than at any point probably in history. Because you see it in Revelation 6, where there's just too many people to even number of every tribe and nation, people that were saved. That was coming out of the tribulation period. So God's grace is most certainly there, and people are still getting saved, even in abundance so. And finally, the last journal article is the one that I agree with the most, and you'll understand once you get there and if you look it up. All right, that one dealing specifically with hermeneutics. So hermeneutics is very important to me, especially when it comes to end times and the book of Revelation in particular. So shoot me an email with any questions that you might have, and I'll get back to you and make sure that you check for my response. And I hope that you have a blessed week of study as we're rounding this out. This is the second to last chapter, the penultimate chapter, which means second to the end. Your last one will be the Christian life. And you guys are doing great right now. So keep up the good work, and I will be talking with you later through Blackboard. All right, you guys. Shalom.